What's up, everybody? I got another reaction video I've been saving to uh, do on this channel. It's another thinking critical video, which I've been an avid subscriber for at least a couple of months now going on. And I really like his takes on a lot of stuff when it comes to like his honest opinion about the world of comics, and not as fanfare or like glazing of particular writers. We know kind of the stuff they put out, it isn't always, if ever, good. It's like I want direct. I mean, even if he legit like a particular writer, but you can also give like honest critiques. I really like. Usually, that's who I tend to follow. People like Dan Merle, for example. When it comes to movies or TV shows, he gives his honest, direct opinion without, because like in full confidence, not being bought off to be flew out to get these little gift baskets and moving and shaking with like certain directors and stuff like that, because they expect you to give like pretty nice critiques, in hopes to get invited back later. I don't care for that kind of stuff. I want people to give their honest takes, or you like them, or you don't, or it's very mid. Either way, I respect either thing. That's why I follow this channel. I started following this channel because he has like very good takes. Even still, like I probably don't agree with everything, but majority of it I do. So, like the video, leave a comment, follow Thinking Critical, because he is, I want to say he's like an expert, but I really like his takes on the comic book industry, and he definitely does his research and not surface level crap. So, he want to talk about the state of Marvel and how Rob Liefeld kind of predicted this. So, let's get to it.
A legend just declared war on Marvel Comics. Rob Liefeld, the creator of Deadpool and X-Force, and one of the defining figures of Marvel's 90s boom, isn't mincing words. In a recent podcast and across a series of social media posts, Liefeld delivered a brutal assessment of today's comics industry. Marvel Comics is in the worst era in the company's history. And Liefeld isn't talking about Marvel's fringe titles, he's talking about their tentpoles. He lays out how Marvel spent the last decade undermining itself, eroding core fundamentals, locking the line into a stagnant creative philosophy, and making publishing decisions that remove comic readers from the equation. They're the tentpoles for a reason. If they don't hold, the entire structure collapses. If you're looking for a comic company that still puts comic fans first, that's why we partner with the 616 Comics. They're the #1 producer retailer in comics and home of the sexiest pinups you will find anywhere. Don't take my word for it. Head over to their website and see what they're doing right. So what exactly is Rob Liefeld talking about when he says Marvel's at their lowest point? He's talking about the cornerstones of the company, the franchises that built the House of Ideas. Liefeld's critique goes straight at the 4 franchises that should be impossible to break: X-Men, Spider-Man, Avengers, and Fantastic Four. His argument is simple. If none of these titles are working, the problem isn't a few bad writers, it's systemic. He describes the X-Men line as overcomplicated and exhausting, weighed down by constant relaunches and social messaging that take priority over character and adventure. Spider-Man is trapped in a stagnant loop, with Peter Parker never truly progressing, constantly diminished, humiliated, or reset, while
Yeah, God, it's so great. As a Spider-Man fan, I find this grating on the nerves. That's why the Ultimate Universe is kicking the mainstream of Marvel Comics ass, because they're free to actually tell some solid stories without having to, at least for the most part, trying to push certain things. Aside from maybe like the Ultimate Avengers with like a they-them Hawkeye, Native American guy, but whatever. I The situation with Mary Jane and the whole Paul situation, I'm not sure what they was thinking, and they don't allow Peter to progress in any meaningful way. I think the last time, in my opinion, was when he was running his company after the whole Doc Ock possession fiasco. And the last time I actually enjoyed reading some X-Men was during the Krakoa era. Because it was actually telling some solid stories, but because Hickman didn't want to do anymore, they decided to kind of reset everything. Probably mostly because the MCU want to try to do this synergy thing instead of letting comics do their own thing. Some didn't care for the whole Sex Island part, but besides that, it's like a whole new status quo that I really appreciated from the X-Men, and they had like a good direction, and they completely blew it all up. I hated that. That's when I was like, okay, I can't read any more X-Men at that point. Why bother? I just probably just go back to classic X-Men since they want to try to reset them back into the 90s state where everybody hates them. And it's like, can we just get past that point? You can still have some people still hate them, but we just kind of take it to a different direction instead of just regressing these characters.
Saturation with 20 Spider-Men and 15 Wolverines further dilutes the brand's meaning. The Avengers, which he says should function as Marvel's flagship, are treated as a brand banner, driven by events and movie synergy, but lacking a clear identity. Yeah, Fantastic Four is described as a legacy property.
The last time the Avengers was actually good, at least for me, was leading up and during the Judgment event where that Celestial was judging people. I think that's the last time I actually enjoyed some Avengers comics.
Without purpose, maintained by Marvel, but without urgency or vision. When Marvel's core franchises are stuck in mediocrity, with comics sitting unsold on store shelves and retailers struggling to move product, Liefeld's conclusion is blunt. There is a leadership failure. When you look at X-Men, it's just so tired. It's so boring at this point. There's really nothing to explore. It's not really an adventure team series anymore. You know, that all-in-one franchise that could do sci-fi, could do fantasy, could do street-level heroes. You could really do everything with the X-Men. But really now you can do nothing but present them as an LGBTQ allegory series. So you're limited on what you can do to the hero.
Yeah, and that is also annoying. And I argue it started with Jean Grey. Some might argue she kind of implanted the whole he's gay thing in his mind because he's been pretty much like a playboy for most of our time. Matter of fact, if they want to regress the X-Men back to the 90s version, that means they gotta take away the whole gay persona they kind of forced upon Iceman. That really stuck in my craw. That is like, oh my god, it couldn't bother to create their own little original character. Yeah, sure, he or she can be gay, but that shouldn't be their main identity. That's what their biggest problem. They put these labels on these characters, and their whole identity is based around their skin color or sexuality and nothing else. And that's maintained. They use it as like a driving force. You got nothing but activists behind these comic book industries. That is a problem. They need somebody to clean house without mercy. Because like you said, you know, remember in the comics, they were in space, there was time traveling, you know, a lot of times they're street level, dealing with other mutant problems. They, kind of like with Batman and to some degree Spider-Man, they're in a unique spot to go in any direction with any genre, and it makes perfect sense. But you kind of strip that away.
Or let them experience, because if you let them experience, you know, failure or some type of trauma, you're trying to say something bad about the LGBTQ community. So those characters,
and obviously I have no problem with a character that belongs in the LGBTQ plus community, but that shouldn't be their entire identity. Like, I use this as an example. John Constantine is for comic book fans, is a well-known bisexual, but that isn't his whole character. He had there's plenty of stories that he got involved in that you rarely see any like maybe over other than maybe a wisecrack or two about him messing around with one night stand with a man, but he leaves it there. They don't dwell on it. They don't like make it as a whole priority. That's how you pretty much do it right. It's perfectly fine, but they just beat you over the head with it just to like earn some kind of social points, and that's just annoying.
Really can't do anything with them. They've handed them over to this group who don't really read the comic books, but they will not let them do anything with them. See also what recently happened with Magic and Tim Seeley. And you know Liefeld is most attached to X-Men. Obviously, that's where a lot of his major success at Marvel Comics comes from, especially talking about X-Force and a lot of the amazing things that he did on New Mutants or whatever. And you know that guy's heart and soul is all with X-Men, and it's got to kill Liefeld to see that. It certainly kills me and, Doc, and I know Perch is a big X-Men fan. And all these people are seeing the exact same problem, but for some reason, Marvel Comics don't see it. And you would think they would definitely want to prioritize Peter Parker a little bit bigger. He is the flagship series. He's the flagship character. He was married. He was moving on with his life. He was becoming a more mature character. Joe Quesada.
And, the Ultimate Universe, both versions, prove that you can tell a solid Spider-Man story when he's married and have a family and still make it work. That whole that BS lie that they told years ago, telling like, oh, there's no way we can tell stories like that if Batman and Spider-Man are in like healthy marriages and stuff like that. Bull crap. You're just lazy.
Put the kibosh on that one, remove the marriage, and Peter is just stuck sitting on people's couches, being embarrassed time and time again, and never being able to overcome any of the stuff that he experienced when he was 15 years old or when he was 20 years old. He's in his mid-30s now, by the sliding timeline. He should be pretty much a functioning adult at this point, and most writers really aren't allowed to have a lot of fun with the character, so they're just constantly rebooting him. I think in the last 12 years, Amazing Spider-Man, that's a title that's right up there with Batman. I think it's had 5 volumes in the last 12 years. So every 2.5, maybe 3 years, something like that, they reboot that series. What's Batman on right now? The 4th volume in 85 years. And if they can't get Spider-Man right, how are they going to get Avengers right? You're not allowed to do anything in Avengers that really affect anything outside of it. If there's ever an event, you must shut down whatever you're doing in Avengers and include the Avengers in it. And you just have this really mediocre, recycled, lame-ass series. And Jed McKay...
Yeah, and that's another... I want to probably speed this up. I don't want to take forever. But yeah, that is also a thing. I think they kind of slowed down a little bit in the past year, but there was like a whole thing where it just seems like they were trucking out events after events, and I was just like, can we just, when you start an event after the first DC Metal event happened, I expected to live with this for at least 4 years, to live in that status quo. But like clockwork, it wasn't even in our second year before it started to make some kind of reboot the universe announcement, and my eyes just kind of rolled.
Hey, I thought he did a good job on Moon Knight at the beginning. He's the worst when it comes to villains. Have you seen the Twilight Court? It's just a bunch of characters from Arthurian legend, and I like King Arthur and Merlin and all that kind of stuff. The Avengers just sucks. It could, in theory, or maybe should in theory, be the flagship title because those are the most popular, well-known superhero characters in the world at this point. Better known probably than Batman, Superman, and probably Spider-Man. But they never got them to work when it came to comic books, and they certainly never got the right team together and never capitalized on the Avengers name and blew all of it, but they're still somehow beholden to the MCU despite all this failure. And the Fantastic Four,
Yeah, and that's kind of like a reciprocal, like snake eating his tail. That's why I wanted the comics to be its own thing, so nobody is beholden to the other. The movies can be their own thing, and the comics can be their own thing. And on occasion, those two have some synergy if both are showing equal promise, but it's just like I believe some bigwigs, probably Kevin Feige, every so often make a call over to Marvel Comics like, hey, we've got this character we're thinking about pushing in a couple of years, or we're pushing this particular thing. Make sure you put that in the comics so so by a year's time we got like a built-in excuse saying like, oh, it's in the comics and we're just like following the comics. That's how I feel what they did with the whole Sam Wilson Captain America thing. I don't have no proof. This is all speculation. This is just my opinion. I think there's like I have a sneaky suspicion that somebody at MCU Disney put some calls out to Marvel Comics to set that up because they wanted to push like this Black Captain America thing because they probably think it was going to make big bucks. Like I said, this is just speculation on my end. It's probably not much to it because I have no proof, but that's what I believe.
I don't even know what to say. They just had a major event featuring Doctor Doom. The writer of the Fantastic Four is doing the major event, and he couldn't even sell the Fantastic Four books then. Nobody was even talking about or interested in this One World Under Doom event after 2 or 3 issues. It lasted 10 months. Doctor Doom, the coolest villain in the entire Marvel comic universe, took over the world, grabbed the Source of Supreme mantle and power, and nobody cared. That's how dead the Fantastic Four are. I guess that's better than it was doing under Dan Slott. We'll just keep doing Ryan North, stupid, goofy shenanigans that have nothing to do with the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four is an adventure book. Space adventure, science adventure. Literally does none of that. When anytime he tries to incorporate science, he comes off looking like an idiot that doesn't know what gravity is, let alone any of the actual scientific principles he's trying to include in the book. And all those franchises are dead. There's nobody that can deny that Marvel Comics is in this terrible place, especially with their major franchises. Thankfully, Liefeld does start to dig into how we got here and what are some of the reasons that we're seeing these symptoms. Liefeld notes that Marvel's decline isn't sudden or accidental. He traces it back to long-term shifts starting in the early 2000s, with Marvel's move away from superstar artists toward a writer-centric production model. That shift enabled high-output writers like Brian Michael Bendis to dominate multiple titles at once, but it also led to creative burnout, overexposure, fan exhaustion, and free-falling sales only a few issues into new runs. More critically, the relationship between comics and film reversed. Instead of comics inspiring movies, the MCU began driving publishing decisions, downgrading comics to marketing material. Comics are IP farms, placeholders, continuity tools, and pitch decks, rather than standalone entertainment. Liefeld also emphasizes that Marvel is no longer producing classic runs or defining moments. Nothing, he believes, will be remembered 10 or 20 years from now. Games like Marvel Rivals and blockbuster films generate buzz around Marvel superheroes, but that excitement never carries over to the comics. At the same time, Marvel has failed to build a new reader pipeline. As manga dominates younger generations, in Liefeld's framing, this isn't a temporary slump, it's a slide toward cultural irrelevance. And he hit a lot of that right on the head. It all started, obviously, with Liefeld himself and Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee and the rest of the Image 6 getting up and leaving basically their Spider-Man and X-Men franchises all at once and creating their own company. And Marvel has been very gun-shy about creating new superstar artists. How many new superstar artists have they even created in the last 10 years? None? Maybe a Stegman? But even then, you look at Ryan Stegman, he had that great run on Venom. He got to do the King of Black series. What's he do now? 1 out of every 3 or 4 issues of X-Men, maybe? But Ryan Stegman teetered on becoming a superstar. And Marvel's like, oh, we don't want him to become too popular because then he could leave the company and leave us in a lurch. So then they went to this writer-centric model where you have writers like Brian Michael Bendis doing, 6, 8 titles all at the exact same time, burning themselves out, but also having a particular style that burnt the readers out as well, because you're basically getting the exact same thing in almost all their major books all at the exact same time. And there was a time when it was Bendis, it was Fraction, Jason Aaron, and it seemed like Kieran Gillen were just writing everything. And it got real boring real quick, and they're doing the exact same thing now. Remember, Jed McKay was on X-Men, Avengers, Moon Knight. He had an event series. Jed McKay was doing everything all at the same time. And there's a problem. Jed McKay was never Brian Michael Bendis. And he's 100% right about the MCU driving everything. We're in the middle of this Kang story. It's been going on for like 2.5, 3 years now, with literally zero payoff and the missing moment. And that was all about Kang. Why was it all about Kang? Because we're supposed to be heading towards the Kang dynasty in Avengers. Oh shit. We're not going to make that movie anymore, but Jed McKay's already got 3 or 4 years of plans to lead into the damn movie, and he can't be out of it at this point. But we don't even get to see Nick Fury anymore. You can only have Nick Fury Jr., within Marvel Comics, even though he's supposed to be in the Ultimate Universe, because people like Samuel L. Jackson, as Nick Fury within the MCU, that's not even the same character. But they treat him like the same character, and you never even get to see the really cool version of him now. And they're making all these decisions about corporate synergy and basically the tail wagging the dog in this case. And what is the Marvel comic book that's still going to be read in 20 years from the last decade? I don't think it's House of X Powers of 10, which is a great story, but because of the follow-up and the way that it ended, nobody's going to want to revisit that. It might be the Venom run and King in Black, but I don't think that's a classic story. That's not Infinity Gauntlet. It's certainly not The Dark Knight Returns. They are whiffing basically on everything, and if there's no classic stories to adapt,
Yeah, I mean, outside of like the Ultimate Universe, well, in terms of events, I say like yeah, Avengers Judgment, King in Black. Even though it's not like my cup of tea, I recognize like the quality. Um, Hawks and Pox X Men event that was impressive, and first DC Metal, that one was incredible. I love that event. Um, Probably like one of those rare events I actually also enjoy the tie-ins, and I usually don't enjoy tie-ins, but that's just off the top of my head in terms of like kind of events that I was really enjoying in the past 10 years. Um, Single issue runs like Daredevil, Punisher, I've been enjoying a lot, and some of Moon Knight. But like you said, there's like uh, there was like a change at some point in terms of writing. Uh, man, yeah, but outside of that, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's others, but I just can't think of it right now. At this point in my age, I have to be very choosy on what kind of time I'm going to put into reading comics. Because rule of thumb, give it 3 issues. If it's not like your cup of tea, bounce. But yeah, I tend to be very like it's kind of like with video games or going to a particular movie. It has to really sing in order for me to like shell out the time and or money to actually watch it or read it.
There's nowhere for the MCU to go. They've shown, Kevin Feige and company at Marvel Studios, when they want to do new ideas that have not been tested in the world of comic books from readers like you and me, it doesn't work. They have no ideas. They don't know what makes the character special. And now Marvel Comics don't know what makes the character special. They think what makes the character special is that they're in movies now. And we all know that's not the case. Now, there are ways to fix this. There are blueprints out there, and Liefeld certainly talks about that as well. Because he doesn't just expose Marvel's issues, he contrasts the company's current approach with strategies that still work. He points to initiatives outside the House of Ideas that emphasize creative vision over IP management, arguing that excitement is generated by talent, not logos or reboots. Marvel's current strategy is based almost entirely on brand recognition, assuming its characters are so massively popular they can sustain interest regardless of quality. Liefeld challenges that assumption by pointing to Marvel's own history, where comics were creator-driven entertainment first, from Stan Lee to Frank Miller to John Byrne, with fans following the talent, not the other way around. The current system prioritizes cross-media alignment over creative risk, resulting in 0 breakout titles. Liefeld notes that numerous creators are declining Marvel work due to limited freedom and diminishing upside, signaling a deeper structural problem. He believes meaningful change requires a major reset, empowering artists, reducing editorial control, and focusing on creators with vision. But he doesn't believe the existing regime is capable of producing excitement at all, implying that leadership needs complete turnover. Without addressing its failure to attract new readers, rampant oversaturation, and the absence of quality stories, Marvel risks long-term decline. In Liefeld's words, the company is at a crossroads. Can the publisher reclaim its legacy, or is the current structure locked in permanently? There's a reason that the MCU became so popular because it was built on the foundation of amazing creative people like a Rob Liefeld, a Jim Starlin, a Stan Lee, all these great creators working within this ecosystem where they were allowed to cook and come up with groundbreaking stories. And sometimes you failed wildly, like with the Clone Saga, but sometimes you hit big with something like Kraven's Last Hunt. You never get any of this stuff anymore because everything's being driven, with the idea of movies in mind, and that's not how things work.
Yeah, and that's another issue. It isn't just with like certain movies and TV shows lately. It's affecting video games and the comics, where certain writers or bigwigs behind these industries rarely like to take risks. And if there's by some miracle a gem coming out of the crap, they want to milk that to death because all of a sudden, kind of like with John Wick. The first John Wick, the audience really cared for it, but the studios didn't want to back it, so that's why you didn't see much marketing behind it. But now that there was a fan base, then they took interest and then like fund film, and it went on to its fourth film, and then like a spin-off and like a TV show. They stopped taking that many risks probably ever since like the MCU really kicked off. I not after Iron Man. I'd be willing to argue it probably started around after the success of the first Avengers film, is when we see a shift and like, okay, we need guarantees to get people in seats to get money. It's supposed to be a creative business, and there's no synergy in between those two things. Say they lost sight of the creative part, where you got to take certain risks and be okay if it fails, and at least it's like something original and not like Velma, where you take some kind of like character insert and ride the coattails of another successful IP just to push whatever messages you want because you want to lecture people.
Not how you get great comics. You have someone like Rick Remender. You're talking about Marvel Comics offering him the X-Men franchises and Spider-Man, and apparently he turned them both down. People don't even really want to work for the company anymore because you're not allowed to become a star. That is publishing malpractice. That is an enormous red mark on C.B. Cebulski and the rest of his team. And there's no doubt when he's talking about some of the other things that
I like being creative. I think a lot of people, as human beings, the vast majority of us love the creative part. That's how we kind of elevate. That's one of our humanity's superpowers, our ability to adapt and create. But if you stagnate that part of us, it results in a negative feedback, pretty much. It's just like, we need to be able to try things and fail. It's kind of like what Thomas Edison was like, coming up with 1,000 ways of trying to create a light bulb, and it's like this famous saying. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but basically it's like I found out 1,000 ways to not create a light bulb. So that's the mindset you gotta allow these creatives to walk into. Find 1,000 ways to not create a particular thing, so we can get to the gem.
They're working right now. He's talking about the Absolute Universe, which is doing gangbusters over at DC Comics. But Marvel did their version of the Absolute Universe already. It was called the Ultimate Universe, and they're about to shut it down. Now, it was successful, but not nearly as successful as what DC has done, because Marvel had already done an Absolute Universe, and it was wildly popular the first time, just like the Absolute Universe is right now. And shockingly, when you come back and you replay that scenario, it's less popular the second time. There's a reason it feels like 2 out of 3 Marvel comic books gets canceled before 12 issues. People come in for the first issue, they try it out, or maybe they're just there for the exclusive covers or something like that, and then they don't come back. So you're just in the cycle of reboot, where it used to be 30, 40 issues, then it got down to 30, now it's down to 20, and now it's to 10. 5 is next, and then after that, everything's a number 1. And that is the cycle that Marvel and their current leadership have created. Do I think they could do something wildly popular like the Absolute Universe or what they're doing over at Energon? Yes, they can do that. But you do need...
And also, fairly recently, they've been doing an amazing job for the first time in a long time with the DC Marvel crossover stuff, where they keep it all in one issue with shorts. What do you call those? Anthology type of adventures, rather than trying to. That's why the previous crossover back in the 90s didn't do so hot, because they try to build this world, or they try to explain too much. He's just like, no. Sometimes there's a crossover, Batman meets Deadpool, and they go on like a particular adventure, try to defeat this particular villain, and they win the day and part ways, and have some fun banter, here and there, and end of the story. You don't need to make it more complicated than that. That I've been enjoying fairly in recent months, and I really need to, because I wanted to put that on a list of comic reviews I want to talk about, because there's like a decent, there's like 3 or 4, probably 5 of those books by now, because a fairly recent one has been like a Thor and Captain Marvel Shazam version. That was pretty good.
A full leadership change. There was a time, the average years a person at Marvel would put in before moving on to another company would be like 5 to 7 years. Tom Brevoort's been there for over 30 years at this point. C.B. Cebulski's been over there for a very long time. Nick Lowe's been there for a couple of decades at this point. All those people that are making all the decisions are the ones that have been destroying the universe and the popularity in Marvel Comics for the last decade, and none of them have new ideas. None of them have a single clear way to get out of the current malaise at Marvel Comics, because they are the cause of the current malaise at Marvel Comics. They're the reason that Marvel Comics can't hire good talent. They're the reason Marvel Comics can't identify new up-and-coming talent. They're the reason that Marvel Comics do not want to create superstars. And until they're gone, there really is no path forward. The path forward is new leadership. It's new vision. It's finding the next Jim Shooter. that comes in, identifies the talent, puts them in the key places, and gets them to work at their highest levels and producing great, amazing runs. There's no reason, there's nothing precluding comic books from delivering awesome stories right now. Is print media as popular as it used to be? No. Is the comic book industry shrinking? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you can't produce good books. But there's no way out with the current strategy that they have right now. There's no way out of this without superstars. There's no way out of this without new ideas. There's no way out of this without a comprehensive digital strategy. I think just taking Marvel characters and making them ultra, ultra dark, which is what I believe C.B. Cebulski and Tom Brevoort and Nick Lowe would learn from the success of the Absolute Universe, will not get them out of here. They need fundamental change. They need real leadership and vision. And Rob Liefeld is 100% right. Marvel
editors. They also need freaking editors to pull over this stuff and look at it. No, we're not putting this agenda DEI bullcrap in this. No, take it out. Get back to the drawing board, or you're out on your ass. We need like daddy back into the house to provide some freaking structure and do away with this nonsense. Hate to sound like harsh, but it is. We reach to a point where you gotta be. It's gotten too much. It's too much. You're shoving it down a lot of people's throats. You're lecturing people. No one wants to be lectured. We go to video games, comics, movies, and TV shows for escapism. That is the central purpose of those things. Can you learn some life lessons from these things from time to time? Certainly. Like, you watch Treasure Planet. They didn't beat you over the head talking about like, oh, all fathers are bad. It's like, no. Sometimes, we got like, there's people out there who has a parent that kind of left them, but they learn coming of age and find, solid parental figures through other people. And you can still grow through that. It's kind of like that. It's like you can find a way to tell that story without beating your head and lecturing the audience.
Comics are in the worst era in the history of the company. They've been the market leader for over 5 decades. Their heroes are more popular today than they were 15 years ago, yet their comics don't produce excitement, longevity, or entice new readers. When your biggest franchises can't move sales, can't keep...
This is why we probably had gatekeepers in the first place. We let people in that, we were being generous, and then all of a sudden there's certain things that slightly offended them, and they want to push on in and change it up. Otherwise, you're istophobe if you don't change it. And it's like we should have fought tooth and nail and kicked their ass out immediately. Damn the PR.
Lifelong patrons engaged and can't bring in new readers. The problem isn't the fans or the characters, it's the system. Rob Liefeld cuts to the heart of it. Marvel Comics don't want to entertain comic readers, and they sure as hell don't want to pay superstar creators. Until that changes, nothing else matters. Not the relaunches, not the events, not the corporate synergy. The real question isn't whether Marvel survives, it's whether Marvel Comics wants to matter again. Liefeld is pulling on much bigger threads in this podcast. If you want to see where this all comes from, watch my breakdown about another Marvel legend that warned the industry 30 years ago and they ignored everything that he said. I'm talking about Jim Shooter. Check out that video. It's right here. There's also a link in the video description. I do appreciate the time, and keep thinking critical.
Yeah, definitely follow his channel, man. Think Critical does some amazing work, great research. Yeah, man. Right now DC is doing like pretty fairly well. It still has their fair share of issues. However, they, on the upswing right now, it's always like a thing where it's like there's a moment when Marvel is up and DC is down and vice versa. There's always that period. But it's very rare we get like both comics industries doing exceptionally well or both doing well. I think we probably see more often them both doing exceptionally worse than the reverse. But we need, like I said, some editors, true editors, to come in there and clean house of this agenda activism bullcrap. No, you had your run for the past 4 or 5 years, and you darn near ran this industry to the freaking ground with producing very rare gems. It's like, no, that's terrible. Go. Here's a little severance package, but it's like, stop hiring these activists straight out of college with only one little essay they did as like a internship. Like, no, you need to start going back to uh, working your way to the top. Working, not like sex work. I'm talking like actually legit. Put in some work, some merit. That's the word I was looking for. Actually, put in some merit. You need to bring that crap back from all these industries because just giving it to people because they have some hard knock life or they go through some trauma or they're a particular race or particular disability or a particular gender or sexual orientation. Don't care. I do not care who you choose to sleep with. I don't care what your skin tone is. Can you do this job? Well, you're gonna work from like intern up until you earn your place in the writer's room making those decisions. And by that point, you learn the trade and know how we do things. I'm not saying that you can't, evolve over time, but you're trying to do this like that, and there's going to be, of course, pushback. And when you get in those writer's rooms, you at least have some wisdom behind you to know when to implement certain quote unquote progressive elements without steamrolling us with it. That's all I'm saying. But let me know what in the comments below what you guys think, and I will see you guys tomorrow with more content. Take care. Have a great night. Peace.